Oh yeah, so I had a funny experience this morning. I rode in this morning, and as I was locking up my bike, some guy on a motorcycle rode by me, going the wrong way, which I had come that way as well, but I'm on a bicycle, it's more acceptable. I'm locking up my bike, I watch the guy go by, and I've still got like an earbud in one ear, and I'm listening to music. I hear a sound, and I kind of look up, look around, don't see anything, and go upstairs about my business. And then an hour and a half later, some guy comes up and goes, "Derick, didn't you see me?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "This morning." And he like draws this out like two or three more times. I'm like, "I did not see you standing on the side of the road anywhere. Were you in a car?" He was like, "I was on my motorcycle." And I'm like, "Oh, you were the guy on the bike." He goes, "Yeah. I dropped my bike, and I yelled for you to help, and you kept walking."
Are you serious?
He dropped his bike in the garage, and it was like a touring bike, so it's like 1,200 pounds or something. He's like, I lost control, and I'm not able to get it back up, and I yelled for you, and you just kept going. And he looks at me like he's demanding a response. I'm like, dude, obviously I did not hear you. He's like, you were right there. I was so relieved to see you were there, and then you just kept going. Plainly, I am not the person to depend on in an emergency because I will be busy staring at my phone and not looking around me.
I think most people don't assume that other people are yelling out doing weird stuff in public that they're talking to them. Even if you aren't playing on your phone, people can call my name over and over again. And my name's unique, too. So, like, they're not calling somebody else.
Yeah, Mari doesn't sound like anything else. Derick sounds like all kinds of things when it's yelled out. Doesn't sound anything like the name, unless you hear the D and the K at the beginning and end. Otherwise, it's just like, it's garbage. Right after he did this, I immediately thought of all the times in high school where people would come up to me with the exact same story. They're like, dude, I was yelling your name and you just kept going. This is before I had earbuds, so I was like, sorry, I just didn't hear you. He's like, I was right behind you.
I was like, why don't you tap on me on the shoulder then? Maybe I just can't tell.
I've had people go up right in my face and I still didn't really recognize them. I just never assume anybody knows me or is talking to me.
Yeah, I assume nobody ever wants to talk to me. So I just keep going my merry way, doing my own thing. Maybe we should just assume that we're like, everyone loves us, and that way we're constantly on the lookout for people calling our names in the street.
Speaking of that, I do have that problem when people are waving. Everyone is waving to me all the time. So if I see anyone waving, I wave back. And 99% of the time, they are not waving to me. And so I always have this awkward experience where somebody waves and says, hey, and I go, hey, and then I hear someone behind me greet them.
Has this ever happened where people were actually waving at you?
No, I don't think anyone's ever waved to me. I have a question for you. Do you finish books because you've started them, or will you give up on them?
Well, I think I don't finish books out of laziness, not because I get tired of them. I think most of the time I'll try to finish a book because I started it. I definitely read Atlas Shrugged all the damn way through just to say that I did it. In retrospect, nobody cares that I did this, but I remember being like, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to finish this book. It was very difficult, but that's like my main one I always think of when I think about how I will try to read a book all the way through.
Yeah, that's one of those things, though, that you read to armor yourself from people who are like, you have to read the whole thing. And when you tell them it sucks and that you hate it.
Very few people that I talk to about having read that book have read that book.
Yeah.
Or even care about Ayn Rand. She's very intense, and I'm not sure her ideas resonate with our generation. I mean, have you read that book?
I read Atlas Shrugged, yeah.
You did? All the way through?
I did. I listened to it.
You listened to it? Oh, I wonder how that would have been. How long was that?
Like 30 hours, I think, probably.
Oh my god.
It wasn't... I actually kind of liked it, but not like in the intense and silly way that a lot of its proponents like it. I didn't realize it was such a popular book for so many contentious reasons. At the time, I was just like, oh, I've heard a lot about this book, and I remember seeing it on bookshelves ever since I was like 10. I would see the dude holding up the world, and I'm like, yeah, it looks like a cool book.
Yeah, it does look like a cool book.
And then I read it, and I was like, oh, well, that was kind of weird. And I kind of moved on, and then 2 years later, somebody brought up how this book was influencing a bunch of assholes who thought they were always right, and preppy college students who couldn't shut the fuck up.
I didn't realize that people were still reading that book and being like, yeah, this is a philosophy I can get behind. And I don't know at what point I figured this out, but like it's like a theme that the whole book is just a little bit of story and then like a shitload of philosophical treatise. It would talk about whatever, I can't remember the main character, the lady's name, but like whatever she's gonna do, why it would be bad to help people like eat or have clothes more than like a ragged piece of shit hanging off their back like scraps. Everyone should be able to get it together on their own. Like, you might have $1 billion, but like, you definitely got those $1 billion on your own. No one helped you. That's what the theme of the book is, that like, if you did well, you have really only yourself to thank for it. Don't worry about everybody else. They should be able to get themselves together on their own because, and if they can't, they're inferior. That's the whole book. But she says it over and over again in different ways. Like, I know how you feel about people now. It doesn't take 1,000 pages to tell people this. I know what you think within like the first 100 pages. And it was like not even an interesting story. Like, I guess it could have been. Maybe it was an interesting story, but like it was just so heavy-handed for so long. I totally do not agree with this woman on like most of her points. I don't think that everyone is just going to be able to get out of the dregs of the industrial society without any assistance. Yeah, a couple people might succeed. Someone's always going to do well regardless, but the average person needs to be able to survive.
Right, but what she's doing in this book is building up straw men. And the funny thing is, like, there's a straw man on who she's defending, the perfect CEO who knows exactly what he wants and needs to do. And then there's the government and all of the welfare state that is constantly asking for handouts from the CEO. So it's like this very cartoonish view of society where it's like, give us everything. And the CEO is like, you will get nothing. I built this empire alone. Like, quite literally, some of the scenes are the CEO, like, managing his business alone, deciding what to do with it, selling it, destroying it, moving along with it. He might as well have been building the rails for the railroad himself. This is kind of the embarrassing part. I'm really bad at seeing philosophy and underlying intentions, but I'm 90% sure I read this book not realizing. I think up until the point where there was a 35-minute speech, or maybe 2 hours, I don't remember. I don't think I realized this was a heavily political book. I kind of just thought it was a weird, slow story. And I was like, oh, this is cool. There's like this big land made out of gold and CEOs. Maybe by the end of it I figured it out, but
It might have been the format.
it did help. Like, actually, the funny thing is, like, you're talking about these people who just want clothes and stuff or not to be poor. I think with the audio version, you actually get to hear the smarminess that comes from everybody who's asking for a handout. Whereas in the book, you can kind of interpret that on your own.
Yeah.
But I know in the audio version, they definitely made everybody who annoyed the CEO or inhibited them sound like an asshole.
That would definitely change your perspective completely. If you were not able to put your own voice to the characters, I do feel like that would make a huge difference with this book. Because, I mean, 'cause I read this book when I was younger.
Yeah.
If I knew what it laid out, I'd been like, I know I'm not going to agree with this. I don't know. I might have still read it just to see what it said since it's so like famous, you know. I think I'm more political than you are too, so I think I might have picked up on that more than you would.
Especially at that time, I think that was definitely in the midst of my audiobook binging when I was probably reading 2 or 3 books a month. And I'm sure that one took an entire month.
I can't believe I read all of it. Considering now how like I actually am enjoying the book that I'm reading now, but I definitely was not putting it away like I was Atlas Shrugged by forcing myself to read that book. Oh my God, Derek, I would go read it for like 10 minutes on my breaks at work. You would just only get through like a couple of these long pages. But I did it all the time. And it wasn't even like enjoyable. It was more like a chore. I have to digest this page now. I don't know. I mean, I am kind of amazed.
You sound flabbergasted with yourself, like you're impressed with the superhuman strength and concentration abilities you used to have.
Just to deal with something I did not like for so like purposely. I don't know. I mean, she did have a good vocabulary, I will say that. You know, reading is good for your brain. And I was like reading sort of philosophy, like I hated it. Some ways of thinking were a little fucked up. The book had just been edited down a lot and still gotten the same point across.
Yeah, like there should be an abridged version. I'm sure there is. Let's see.
Well, all she ever did was really just tell me like how obsessed she is with this. Talking to her in real life would probably be not enjoyable and really intense. Like, geez, lady, like let's just eat some dinner, chat about not society. Actually, Jesus, that'd be terrible.
No,
Anything
not
else?
politics. Okay, so the abridged version is 11 hours. I'll bet you it has every single bit of the story still in there, fully intact.
Where they just like cut out whole chunks of the book? Is that how that works?
Yeah, abridged versions. They I don't think they modify the book. They might have to. I don't know.
I feel like they would have to if they cut out 19 hours of it.
I think that's entirely possible with this book, where they just be like, all right, this scene ends. It makes this point. Now we can move on to the other character and just leave out all the extra bullshit that she does to hammer home the point that this person is a god and is being tortured by mere mortals who are not CEOs.
You know, for a book that I did not like so much, I feel like we talk about it a pretty good amount.
I think like there's a lot of books out there or things out there that are famous for being famous, and they are more famous for having people critique them. And this is actually why, and something I agree with too. When you're arguing religion with people, you are perpetuating the validity of their argument by even addressing their argument. It's why when Christian evangelists will have debates on news shows and stuff with people like Bill Nye or whoever else is like a famous atheist. Because regardless of how stupid they actually look, they're getting credit just for being there. Like, look, I'm arguing with Bill Nye. I'm making all these points, and he's famous for being an atheist. And I stood toe to toe with him.
That is true.
Yeah, it's kind of why I haven't really gotten into any political arguments recently as well. But also because I think at this point I've kind of moved beyond trying to convince individual people. Like, I don't think that actually helps, and studies have shown trying to convince people to change their mind doesn't work.
Derek, you came to the same conclusion I did around the same time in my life that I did.
30 years old, stop arguing.
Yeah, it's just eventually like you just realize that you're not changing anyone's mind and you can be like super educated about a topic. Nobody cares. They're just gonna believe whatever they want to believe. And you also end up wasting your time and people get mad and what is the draw here?
Yeah, because it feels good to be right to yourself, but there's also, in relation to this, that people who watch Colbert or any other political satirist will always feel like he is on their side, no matter if he is or not. Stephen Colbert can go out and say, I hate conservatives, but the fact that he pretends to be one is enough for a lot of conservatives to be like, oh, yeah, he's just mocking us to mock them. This has happened across the board for like the last 40 years. It's not an advent of the internet or anything like that.
Wow, that's weird. I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting.
It was also really it was depressing when I first heard that, because I always felt like The Daily Show and Stephen Colbert were pretty obviously liberal shows mocking a lot of, I mean, they mocked both sides, but it was definitely very liberal, and they were always kind of leaning that way, but apparently it doesn't matter, because if you're on either side, you think he's with you.
I feel like The Daily Show, I'm more surprised at people thinking that's more conservative, but the way Stephen Colbert did the Colbert Report, if you didn't really listen to him and you kind of listened to like the more blustery stuff,
Yeah.
which is what like, you know, people who would, I feel like more conservative people might not be listening to a lot of the substance stuff and like maybe getting the undertones of a lot of it.
Yeah, he was a little more obvious on that occasion. And honestly, The Daily Show probably shouldn't be included in that, because I don't think it's technically satire. That's just commentary.
I'm not gonna get into what it is now, but there was like a couple of things. That's like a more of a comedy show, like more kind of jokey, like talk about political stuff. But yeah, satire, I would say it is not. But also now, I don't know. I don't know if you've ever seen like the new Stephen Colbert stuff. He's in the Late Show now, and if you watch it now, he is himself in that on that show and not like the character anymore.
Yeah.
And after Trump won the election, most of my political shows, they went off the air within like a couple of weeks because like it was the end of their seasons. So I was only stuck watching that. It was kind of nice because Stephen Colbert was like openly sad that Donald Trump won. Watching him say a couple of things and the way he would say it was so funny. I wondered how people were or how they felt when they first started watching him on the Late Show, him being like not this rowdy conservative, crazy guy anymore and was kind of more of a liberal guy. I think that probably shocked a lot of people who didn't realize that he is not like that was the character that he played. You know, I'm not a big fan of variety show kind of stuff, but I don't like skits that much, but I like political commentary jokes.
You mentioned before that you didn't want to comment on the Daily Show currently. Why you don't like Trevor Noah?
His voice is not my favorite, like his accent, and I don't think he's as funny as, or funny or as witty as like I want it to be.
I don't feel like his jokes are ever as deep as Jon Stewart always cut whenever he was making fun of someone.
Yeah, I liked before. See, I don't really know, and maybe I'm not giving him a good enough chance, but when I do watch clips, like I don't really enjoy him as a host. Maybe he better like as a side person. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not giving him a good shot. It's not something I sit there and be like, oh man, this guy's a really good host. He's doing really awesome. Like when Stephen Colbert came on, we were like, holy shit, he was in the background most of this time. Like with the other two, like Stephen Colbert or like Jon Stewart. Especially Jon Stewart was so driven, smart. I don't know. He knew what he was talking about. It just like came through in a certain way. That I feel like more Trevor Noah seems like he's just reading. So maybe he does know stuff, but it doesn't feel as authentic.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, they pulled this guy out of nowhere when I felt like all of the other correspondents could have done this job. Maybe it wasn't as good as Jon Stewart, or at least, to the people who already knew and loved Jon Stewart's style, but I felt like every one of the secondary people they had were awesome, and they all could have done it.
You know who I found recently though?
Hmm.
I did not like her actually on The Daily Show. I thought she was super annoying. And I thought I was like, man, I would never watch her in anything else. Was Samantha Bee.
Samantha.
She's like a blonde lady.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, she would catch me off guard because for some reason her voice, I think it irritated me, but then she would suddenly say things that just made me like cry with laughter.
Oh, well then maybe you'll love her show because she has a show called Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. And I really like it. I think she's really funny and she seems like she's really smart. She's someone I think could have to do the Daily Show.
Yeah, she would have been a cool replacement.
Yeah, I think she would have done a really good job if they put her as the lead because I really enjoy her actual show and they're like similar in that in a way. So, but yeah, I like her a lot. I'm watching that. I don't think many people know about that show compared to Daily Show.
No, does not seem that way. I'm trying to find out who the black girl is with the dreads or braids.
Jessica something. I think her name is Jessica.
She's got a podcast too, which I did not like, but I felt like she had a funny attitude too. Or she was funny and she had attitude. Which I liked and I enjoyed because I feel like Trevor Noah is this weird, boring guy.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad calling him boring 'cause he's like a regular person. He's like a person.
He's a person.
I don't know. It's just, it lost a lot, I think, with the personality changes.
Yeah.
I was really sad that Jon Stewart was gone for this year since Donald Trump was like running. He definitely revealed things to people in ways like, and they would listen to him and more so than like other sources of news. Like we don't really have that, I guess, on the left. I don't know. It's not as easy to sensationalize stuff. That he would just provide truth in a more interesting and bare bones way without being fluffy or annoying.
And the funny thing is, we have, if you have HBO anyway, or well, there's Last Week Tonight.
Oh, I love that show.
It's a great show, and I think a lot of people treat it the same way as The Daily Show, which it does have a similar format in critiquing the news. But in his interviews, they're like, do you realize a lot of people get their news from us? He's like, I swear to God, I hope not. There's no way this should be a thing. We are not a news show. And I felt like, what a load of shit. Are you kidding? What the fuck else are people going to watch? CNN, Fox News, or like just reading shit on the internet? Like,
Yeah, I don't really know where we're supposed to go. I don't really consider his show necessarily a news show though, because the one thing I really like about his show more than other shows, they do like investigative reporting, kind of. They do like 15-minute segments on things where they go in depth with stuff. There's things that are happening in society now. They're not necessarily like what's happening on the political scene now, except Donald Trump stuff.
that's fair. I guess news is a very specific thing. But, if you only hear about things going on in the world once a week or once every 2 weeks, then...
For like a half an hour.
Yeah. I mean, really, what else is everyone else dedicating to it? Like an hour a night with the nightly news? That barely counts.
I don't know. Have you ever watched the nightly news?
Not in a long time, but last time I remember it was a lot of shit like talking about a few celebrities, a couple special events, a car accident, traffic, and then they'd go to commercial with, and find out if your tap water will kill you at 10 tonight. I'm like, they're going to make me wait 4 hours to find out if my tap water is going to kill me?
I'm pretty sure that's how it still is because my mom would go Like we'd be hanging out and then like we have dinner or whatever. I mean, I don't even know when this will come on, and she'd be like, "Okay, I'm gonna go watch the news now," and I'd be like, "What?" I think I watched it with her once, and I was like, "Holy crap! The news is exactly the way it was before," which was like, how does everyone watch it for a full hour? 'Cause it's full of junk. There's a couple of nuggets of interesting information in there, but most of it's bookended with human interest pieces or things that aren't really pertinent for news, but it helps fill up an hour in a well-paced way, I guess.
Yeah, and it gets people continuing to watch because a lot of news can just generally be bad. Like, there's not a lot of sudden cures for things or, relief funds being distributed. It's usually just explosions, crashes, politics, and other things people don't care about.
I think I was 12 or 13 when I did this. It's not really an experiment, I guess, but I would watch the news. I think it came out like 10 o'clock. It was so late for some reason. I remember being like, why does it come on at 10? Why can't it come on at like 9? That's a reasonable time. But that was time for like shows to come on. Like I realized like that was when the popular shows came on was 9. But I realized though that the whole news they would be talking about what the main story was, but they don't show the main freaking story until like 10:50. So you just stay up the whole hour to watch something that's probably kind of disappointing and not what you thought it was gonna be. I remember I don't know, I watched the news a couple of times in a row and I was like, this is how it always happens. This is stupid and annoying, and that's when I stopped watching the news. This is dumb. And then thankfully the internet came into existence.
Yeah, and you could filter your news.
Yeah, and then, well, not even just that, but like I didn't have to watch freaking Fox 5 anymore at 10 o'clock at night, waiting a full hour to maybe hear the interesting story if I wasn't already tired of watching the news by then.
Hmm.
What an interesting story you've just listened to from me.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to let you hang there. Yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about it, especially with Trump winning. Everyone's like, oh, everyone's in their own news bubble, and they're treating it like it's this new thing, blaming it on Facebook. And I just kind of feel like, no, this has absolutely always been a thing. Maybe to certain degrees it wasn't as bad in some ways, but who the fuck ever hangs out with people they constantly disagree with? It's a very special symbiotic relationship that you can't expect to have. Most people you disagree with are assholes about it. Like, I don't go hang out with people that are drastically different from me, not because I don't want to hear contrasting ideas, but because those ideas are put and packaged in shitball ways, along with belligerence or arrogance or something else that just isn't conducive to being someone's friend or hearing their thoughts. And so, yeah, like, this circumvents every aspect of someone's life. I'm not going to hang out in those bars. I'm not going to watch those TV shows. I'm not going to call up those relatives. You can tell me all you want to reach out and, vice versa, that everyone should be hearing each other's thoughts and getting opposing opinions. Maybe once in a while, incidentally. I don't feel like Facebook has the power to trap me in my own bubble more than my own self.
But no, I think you put that very well because I am not going to actively choose to hang out with people who might believe that gay marriage shouldn't exist or women should be in the kitchen. I don't know, that's kind of extreme. But like when I'm hanging around people, like I don't enjoy debating anymore that much unless it's certain people and they tend to be more educated as well because it provides for a better debate, even if they're on the other side. People self-segregate even like in small ways. I'm not even talking about like along racial lines, but on like socioeconomic lines and sexual lines.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to like educate yourself on the other side, but like we're never gonna have this end mesh thing where like the groups are like half one belief and half the other belief.
Yeah, I noticed, because it's never just that. It's not like, oh, I have this friend and we get along in great ways, but she thinks women are second-class citizens. It's not an isolated idea that someone's going to hold.
I remember having a conversation with a lady who believed that Obama is a lizard person. Yeah, I was sitting over there one day, we were just hanging out, and I was like, let me just chat. We'll just chat and see how this goes. And at some point she brought up that Obama and like his whole cohort, which I believe involved Hillary Clinton too. I think she was named by name. This is like obviously way before Hillary like actively started related to this election, but yeah, truly believe that they're lizard people and that they're just hiding it. So I was like, you really believe they're lizard people, huh? She said, yeah. And like, you'll know. One day it'll come out. I was thinking, no, I won't. That's never gonna happen. But yeah, like that's the kind of thing like I wouldn't necessarily want to like when you're hanging out with people, you have like interesting conversations. I don't want to have my interesting conversations have to be about weird shit like lizard people. That's kind of extreme as well. But like, I don't know.
Just a bit.
The lizard people thing, it always pops up in my mind because it's so weird to me and so funny.
It is out of left field. There's no transition there. It's like the government's corrupt. The government's inefficient. The government is run by lizard people.
I know! Aliens that can like look like humans. This is logical to people. I remember when she said it, I just sat there and I was like, man, I feel like this is not real. That this is actually not happening right now. Who would even believe that? But she does. So
I googled that phrase because I have vaguely heard about this conspiracy theory before. And the funny thing is, Google went ahead and captioned an Atlantic article from a few years ago, and it said, like, I love the presumption of how it starts out. It says, as 12 million Americans, quote, know the United States government is run by lizard people. But they never said which members of the government are reptilians.
oh, it's right, reptilians.
Yeah, that is a bit extreme, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have a right to be insulted that you jumped from comparing conservatives to lizard people, conspiracy theorists. Or at least that was the natural progression of your thought.
Well, it's the funniest one I have about people who I wouldn't. It wasn't even about saying conservatives. It was mostly just people tend to not hang out with people who have radically different ideas. The things that define us, what we believe in, seems to like reflect how we feel about other people. Should women have rights? Should gay people have rights? Do people have the right to be assisted by the government, or are people expected to like take charge on their own? Ayn Rand style, like everyone should just pull up by their bootstraps, whatever the phrase is. I don't know. But I feel like a lot of the things that the people define themselves politically, it's the way you think. When I'm like talking to people, and I tend to have more deep conversations with people when I'm hanging out with the people I like to talk to, and I get more annoyed over a period of time of having to listen to like things that I think are kind of fucked up for people to believe. And it makes me less likely to want to hang out and or be like really deep friends with somebody unless we have some other kind of thing to bond over. But even then I'll be like, man, I cannot believe that you like think this. I don't know how it would actually feel in practice with somebody who is so radically different than me.
Yeah, it doesn't help that people who share your beliefs will also be naturally attracted to you, and so all of you together form a clique. There's different cliques for different things, whether it's work, just hang out with your friends, or whatever. The kind of people you hang around, you all kind of naturally chose to be around each other in one way or another. So somebody with an opposing idea, like I think the government is run by lizard people, might be kind of hard to jump in there in casual conversation and not be attacked by every person there. So even if the group had an outlier, like it's unlikely they'll stand out. And that was something that got brought up a lot in all the Trump confessions after he was elected. There's a lot of people writing online like, I've always agreed with him, but I never felt comfortable around my friends because they were all assholes about it and just assumed I was the pro-rapist shithead if I thought that he should be president.
You know, I also thought too, after I finished saying what I said before, that I was really good friends with like a really religious girl when I was in college. Like, I believe God buried dinosaur bones in the ground to tempt us.
Whoa.
The kind of religious. So, I don't know. I did ignore that for a while. I guess people can do it. I did like her for other reasons though, because she was also weird and funny in different ways.
I had a friend in middle school like that. Periodically, he would come to school and be like really hardcore religious. I started giving him my fantasy books, and he would kind of have doubts like as to whether or not he should read them because they talked about other gods, and he was afraid of being accused of idolizing another god. And I'm like, this is fiction, man. Like, it's fine. He'd be fine with it for about 2 weeks, and then he'd come back, and he's like, my dad saw me reading this, and he wants me to give this back. And then like, a couple days would go by, he'd see me reading, we'd start talking about it again, and I'd lend him a different book. And the same thing would happen like 2 or 3 times. And then the school year ended, and I think we were still on good terms in that way. And he was like, do you mind if I borrow a few books for the summer? I never saw those books again.
Derek, you probably changed that kid's life, man.
No, his dad probably found him and burned him.
It's okay. You still gave him like an out to like think about stuff. Even if his dad burned those books, it would probably actually help the cause because that kid's gonna be like, maybe it doesn't have to be this way. Like, I enjoy reading. It's okay to read.
It's okay to read fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Can't talk about other gods.
You can't talk about other gods? That was like you can't worship other gods.
Yeah, that's kind of how I interpreted it too, but the fact that he wasn't able to read about another god, maybe that just took it too far because you're internalizing the words.
I don't know. I feel like religion's really weird because you can interpret it to mean any number of things. I don't know. People get really intense about rules that aren't necessarily imposed by like the actual religion, but more of what the local practice is. It's kind of hard to live up to like subjective and moving rules.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't really understand what the basis is. Like that kid, he wasn't sure if he should read because he felt like maybe he was honoring other gods than like the main god because he was thinking about this fantasy world. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It's like a little mind F there.
A mind fuck.
Yeah, I guess so. If you want to be vulgar about it, Derek.